The echo of a child's trembling voice broke through the silence of a vast office, as sharp as a knife cutting glass. "Dad, what color is the sky?" The words lingered like a ghost, impossible to ignore. Victor Salazar, one of the most powerful CEOs in the country, froze in his leather chair. He could close billion-dollar deals in minutes, command armies of employees, and bend politicians with a single phone call. But how could he explain the color of the sky to a boy who had never seen light? The boy's name was Daniel. He was only 8 years old, fragile and pale, growing up surrounded by marble, glass, and steel inside the Salazar mansion. He had never seen his father's face, never seen the sunrise, never seen the fortune he was supposed to inherit. Since birth, darkness had been his only companion. Doctors had said the same thing again and again. The optic nerve is damaged. There is no cure. He will never see. Victor refused to accept it. He sent his son to the best hospitals in Europe, Asia, and America. He bought machines no one else could afford, flew in surgeons with hands worth millions, and demanded miracles. But no matter how much he paid, the answer was always the same. There is nothing we can do. Daniel didn't ask for surgeons or experiments. He only wanted what any child wanted, to run in the sunlight, to know what blue looked like, to see his father's face. But instead of joy, he lived with questions. In his room, he would touch his toys with trembling fingers, asking the maids about colors. "The red feels like fire," they told him. "The blue is cold, like water. The green smells like freshly cut grass." Daniel smiled politely, but inside he was breaking. At night, he whispered to his teddy bear, "I would give anything to see just one star." His wish disappeared in the vast halls of the mansion, swallowed by marble walls and indifference. Victor heard his son sometimes, late at night. His heart stirred for a moment, but pride always silenced him. "Money will solve it," he told himself. Money always solves everything. He didn't realize that the answer would come from where he least expected it, not from doctors with degrees or machines worth millions, but from wrinkled hands holding a mop belonging to someone the world ignored. The Salazar mansion was a kingdom of wealth. Guards at the gates, chauffeurs, gardeners, chefs, assistants. Everyone moved under Victor's command. And yet, at the center of it all, Daniel lived like a ghost, unseen, unheard. One morning, just as the sun climbed over the horizon, an old woman arrived at the mansion. Her name was Rosa Alvarez. She was a cleaner, hired by an agency that barely knew her name. Her clothes were plain, her shoes worn, her hair pinned in a tight bun of gray strands. She carried nothing but a faded cloth bag and the kind of dignity that doesn't need riches to exist. The butler looked at her with disdain. "You'll take the east wing and the back corridors. Stay out of sight. Do your work and don't cause trouble." "Yes, sir," Rosa replied softly. She bowed her head and walked in, ignored by most, mocked by others. To them she was just another poor woman desperate for a paycheck. But Daniel, sitting alone in the garden, would soon discover she carried something no money could buy. That afternoon, Daniel sat on a stone bench with his teddy bear in his lap, his face tilted toward the warmth of the sun he could never see. He listened to birds and imagined what colors they might be. Then a voice startled him. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Daniel turned his head. "Who's there?" "Just a cleaning lady," Rosa answered, her tone calm and kind. The boy smiled faintly. "I'm Daniel. I live here. But I don't see anything." "That doesn't mean you can't feel," Rosa said, moving closer. "And sometimes feeling is more powerful than seeing." Daniel frowned. He was used to pity, to fake encouragement from strangers. But there was something different in her voice, something honest. "How do you know that?" he asked cautiously. "Because once I lived in darkness too," Rosa said. She sat beside him. "Not in my eyes, but in my heart. And when you learn to listen, to breathe, to touch the world, you find light again. For the first time in years, Daniel felt understood. Can you teach me? He asked eagerly. Close your eyes, even tighter than they already are, Rosa instructed. Tell me what you hear. Daniel obeyed. He listened carefully. Birds, the leaves moving, footsteps on gravel. Rosa smiled. Then you've already learned half of it. The world is speaking to you. You only need to keep listening. From the balcony, two maids whispered mockingly. Look at the old woman playing teacher. She'll be gone in a week, the other laughed. But Daniel didn't care. For the first time, he wasn't alone. When Victor came home that evening, he was shocked to hear his son laughing in the garden. What's going on here? He asked coldly. I met a lady, Daniel said innocently. She's teaching me to hear the world. Victor raised an eyebrow. A cleaning lady? Don't waste your time, son. She knows nothing of life. But deep inside, Victor couldn't deny what he saw, the rare smile on his boy's face. Days turned into weeks. Rosa continued cleaning, but every spare moment she spent with Daniel. She taught him to feel textures, to recognize scents, to sense shapes with his fingertips. A lemon's rough skin, lavender's calming aroma, the rough bark of a tree, every lesson was a revelation. The staff mocked her quietly, but Daniel's joy grew brighter each day. Rosa never promised him sight. She promised him life. And then something happened no one expected. One afternoon, as Rosa touched Daniel's cheek gently, he blinked, his breath caught. Wait, I think I saw something. A flash of light. Rosa froze. What did you say? A light, Daniel whispered, trembling. Tiny, but real. It was impossible. Years of doctors, millions of dollars, endless surgeries, and now, with the touch of a cleaner's wrinkled hand, a miracle? That night, Daniel told his father. Dad, I saw a light today. Victor slammed his glass on the table. Nonsense. Don't let that woman fill your head with lies. Only doctors can help you. But for the first time, Daniel didn't back down. She gives me hope. That's something your doctors never did. Victor's face hardened, but his chest tightened with fear. Could it be true? Could his empire of wealth mean nothing compared to the faith of a humble woman? The mansion buzzed with rumors. Servants whispered of Daniel walking more confidently, of him reaching for objects he couldn't have known were there. I think he saw the staircase, one maid whispered. Another swore she heard him describe a cloud drifting in the sky. By the time Victor heard the whispers, rage consumed him. Bring that woman to me, he ordered. Rosa stood calmly before him, her hands still carrying the faint scent of herbs from her cloth bag. Who do you think you are? Victor thundered. You're a cleaner, nothing more. Stop playing with my son's mind. I don't play, Rosa replied softly. I only help a boy who lives in shadows. You're filling his head with fantasies. Before Victor could continue, Daniel rushed into the office. Don't yell at her, Dad. She's the only one who understands me. If you expel her, I'll go with her. The words pierced Victor like a blade. His empire trembled not from competitors or rivals, but from the voice of his blind son. That night, Victor sat alone with his whiskey, haunted by the boy's words. He couldn't admit it, not even to himself, but doubt had entered his heart, and no amount of money could chase it away. Meanwhile, in the quiet of Daniel's room, Rosa placed a small jar on the knitstand. Inside was a balm of herbs and resins, something she had inherited from her grandmother. What is it? Daniel asked. A remedy for tired eyes, Rosa explained. It brings comfort, sometimes. More than that. Daniel swallowed hard. Will it help me? I promise nothing, Rosa whispered. Only that I'll do it with love. She spread the balm gently over his eyelids, her wrinkled fingers moving like a prayer. Daniel shivered. I feel Light, Rosa, like the sun is inside me. Tears welled in her eyes. The impossible was beginning. And in that mansion of marble and pride, a secret war was starting between a CEO who believed money could buy everything and a humble cleaning lady whose faith could awaken miracles. The mansion woke to whispers. Servants repeated the same story again and again. The boy saw light. He felt colors. He's changing. Some mocked it as foolishness. Others murmured it might be sorcery. But all of them knew something had shifted. Victor paced in his office like a lion in a cage. He summoned specialists, again renowned ophthalmologists, neurologists, scientists flown in at obscene costs. They examined Daniel for hours, shining bright lights into his eyes, asking questions, scribbling notes. "What do you see, boy?" one asked. "I see shadows. Sometimes flashes, sometimes colors," Daniel answered. The doctors exchanged skeptical looks. Finally, one of them spoke. "Sir, this is medically impossible. At best, it could be psychological illusions." Victor exhaled sharply. Relief and anger tangled in his chest. "You hear that, Daniel? It's nothing but imagination." But Daniel shook his head. "No, I know what I saw." From the back of the room, Rosa's voice rose calmly. "Doctors know what their books teach them. But some truths live beyond their pages. The child's heart tells the truth. The light is returning." Victor exploded. "Enough! Get this woman out of my house." Guards stepped forward, but Daniel cried out, "If she goes, I go with her." His small body trembled, but his voice rang clear. For the first time, the boy stood against his father's empire of power. Victor froze, torn between fury and fear. Never had his son defied him so directly. For a moment, silence swallowed the room. Then, with a wave of his hand, he dismissed the guards. Rosa stayed for now. Days passed, and Daniel's progress became undeniable. He walked the corridors with more certainty, no longer fumbling for every step. He reached instinctively toward windows when sunlight poured in. In the garden, he touched a tree and whispered, "It's tall, with brown below and green above." The servants gasped. He had described a tree, not guest described. That evening, at dinner, Daniel set his spoon down and said quietly, "Father, today I saw red, the maid's scarf." It was red. Victor nearly choked on his wine. "Stop this nonsense," he thundered. "You are blind. You will always be blind." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "I know what I saw. You don't have to believe me, but it's real." Rosa, standing silently by the doorway, felt her heart ache. She knew Victor's pride was a fortress, but even stone can crack. One night, Rosa gave Daniel another small dose of her herbal balm. As she rubbed it gently over his eyes, Daniel gasped again. "I see more now. The darkness is thinner." His hands reached out desperately, as if trying to grab hold of the fragile light. In that same moment, across the mansion, Victor sat in his study, drowning in whiskey. His empire was unshakable, his name feared, but here he was, powerless before the truth in his son's trembling voice. He whispered to the empty room, "If this is real, then everything I believe in is a lie." The next morning, the household buzzed louder than ever. Daniel had walked down the grand staircase without hesitation. He had stopped midway and placed his hand on the railing, exactly where it curved. The maids covered their mouths in shock. "He saw it," they whispered. "He saw the staircase." Victor confronted Rosa again. "What trick are you playing? What poison are you giving him?" "No poison," Rosa replied calmly. "Only herbs. And love. Love is something he was starving for." Victor's face burned red. "Are you saying I don't love my son?" "I'm saying love isn't measured in money, sir," Rosa said softly. "It's measured in presence. And your boy needed you, not your fortune." The words struck like arrows. Victor wanted to scream, to crush her with threats, but something inside him quivered. He turned away, unable to meet her eyes. Daniel, unaware of his father's torment, continued to bloom. One afternoon, sitting on the bench with Rosa, he suddenly pointed upward. There, in the sky, white, soft, like cotton. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "That's a cloud, Daniel." "You just saw a cloud." The boy laughed and cried at once, throwing his arms around her neck. "I saw it. I really saw it." The staff whispered in awe. For years, the boy had been a ghost in darkness. Now he was seeing the heavens. When the news reached Victor, he refused to believe. "It's impossible," he growled. He called for Dr. Herrera, his personal physician. "Examine him. Tell me the truth." Dr. Herrera tested Daniel relentlessly. Flashlights, colored cards, objects of different shapes. Daniel answered each test with trembling certainty. "That's blue. That's yellow. That's a square." Finally, the doctor lowered his tools. "Sir, I cannot explain this. But the boy is seeing." Victor's glass fell from his hand, shattering on the floor. His entire world, the belief that money was absolute power, cracked like fragile glass. And yet, instead of joy, anger consumed him. "It wasn't her," he insisted. "It was my money, my doctors, my machines. She's nothing but a cleaner." Rosa met his eyes, unshaken. "You can keep your pride, sir. I don't want it. I only want the boy to see the sky." The mansion became a battlefield of whispers. Servants took sides, some loyal to the master, others quietly in awe of the miracle blooming in Daniel's eyes. Then came the night that changed everything. Daniel stood at his bedroom window, the moon shining bright outside. He clutched his teddy bear, tears glistening. "Father," he whispered, "I saw a star tonight." Just one, but it was real. Victor, standing in the doorway, froze. His chest heaved, his throat tightened. He wanted to dismiss it, to call it a dream, but the innocence in his son's voice shattered his defenses. For the first time in years, Victor Salazar wept. Not in front of shareholders, not before rivals, but before his son. Rosa entered quietly, watching father and child. She knew the battle was not yet won, but something had cracked inside the mighty CEO. Over the following weeks, Daniel's sight grew stronger. Colors became clearer, shapes more defined. He ran through the garden, laughing, pointing at flowers, at birds, at the sky. "That's yellow. That's green. That's blue." Victor stood at a distance, torn between wonder and pride. The empire he had built seemed smaller now compared to the miracle in his son's eyes. Finally, one morning, Daniel grabbed his father's hand and pulled him outside. "Come, Dad, look." Victor followed reluctantly. His son pointed upward, eyes shining with tears. "The sky. It's blue, just like they told me. But now I see it myself." Victor stared at him, speechless. For all his wealth, he had never bought a moment like this. His knees trembled. He sank onto the bench beside his boy. For the first time, he held him without pride, without arrogance, just as a father. Rosa watched from a distance, her wrinkled hands folded. She had done what no fortune could achieve. She had given the boy the sky, but Victor, though softened, still struggled. That night he confronted her one last time. "Why you? Why not the doctors I paid fortunes for? Why not the hospitals I built? Why did the light return through your hands?" Rosa's voice was gentle, yet firm. "Because light doesn't answer to money, Mr. Salazar. It answers to faith and to love. That is all." Victor bowed his head, broken. His empire, his pride, his arrogance, none of it mattered compared to the fragile miracle sitting upstairs, looking at the stars for the first time in his life. From that day forward, everything in the Salazar mansion changed. Daniel no longer lived in darkness. Laughter replaced silence. Hope replaced despair. And Victor, though still a powerful man in the eyes of the world, learned the one lesson his fortune could never buy. The greatest treasure he ever held was not his empire, not his money, not his influence. It was the sight of his son eyes wide with wonder, gazing at the sky for the very first time. And beside them, always, was Rosa, the humble cleaning lady, whose wrinkled hands carried more power than all the wealth in the world.